Good afternoon. Some of you probably have a lot invested in the future and where you're going to end up, and probably are going to be focused on to perform your duties well into the context of a host culture. Some of you may work locally now or in a similar culture that is nice and cozy and also familiar and seemingly safe to the American culture, which is great. If you, That's great for you. Most of you may well be the next Hudson Taylors of our generation. Some of you might serve our Lord into great obscurity, so I get it. As you're probably asking yourself right now, how does this affect me? What is anthropology? Is it like Indiana Jones? Well, he's an archaeologist, not an anthropologist. And science isn't the main antagonist. We happen to be natives of heaven, living locally, to a skeptical, hostile culture that believes they have no room for God in their worldview. Some of you might be taught. I know, I was one of them, and the only divide that exists between being a missionary and anthropologist are the ones that we create through the presuppositions that we have adopted and we hold on to. Some of you aren't convinced, and that's okay. So the great question is, why should you care about anthropology? First topic I want to talk about, the superculture. You're probably, what the heck is that? Is that a type of spice? Is that some type of pasta dish? I don't know. Imagine that all culture everywhere exists in this permeable membrane, like many different jellyfish, you know, just floating, coexisting fish heads that um, have some links to each other. There may be some commonality, some some bridge, just suspended together without really meeting. They're just there. They're aware of each other, but not quite. Doesn't always mix. This isn't how it used to be. If you are familiar with the passage in Genesis 11, 1 through 9, mankind was once one people with one common language. And our sin and wickedness forced God to step in, and he did so by separating and confusing man. How deep does this run is what you're asking if you've never read this passage. Well, considering that we are only now, in the last 30 years, as close as we've ever been to restoring something that resembles a harmonious state as it would seem on the surface, in Genesis 11, it looks it's safe to say that there's still distance in all of us, and these effects and the curse still exist. So what does that mean? This means that the natural man is currently doomed to live perpetually in degrees of cultural separation. Now, you know that Matthew 28, Jesus tells his apostles and his disciples, yes, you and I as well, to go out and make disciples of all nations and all tongues. His true desire is that none of us should perish in 2 Peter 2:3-9. So now that we have a fragmented state of humanity already in place, separated and just kind of hanging out, we're now asked to cross. We're now asked by our God to cross these cultures, to cross through these membranes, and to penetrate, to coexist. That seemingly coexist neighborly apart. The very gospel that we are charged to bring with us is the very thing that is able to allow us to bridge the gaps between ourselves. And that's what we like. That's the term that we use is called superculture. The key word being supra, which is defined as being above or beyond the limits or outside of. That reflects the very nature of our God as the one um, has predominant attribute is holiness. Deuteronomy 7:6, which means that he's outside of, he's called out of culture. God's message is direct reflection of his redemptive love and outside intervention. He uses his people to ambassador this message to all. So if the cultures of this world are those jellyfish that surround one another in direct separation, we're the tentacles that come from an outside source, from outside of it to be brought to it. The gospel being superculture to the culture would exist as all-encompassing membrane that is able to include all and reach all. just like the king jellyfish in that episode of SpongeBob, where he tries to go and catch the king jellyfish. It's just bigger and in size and all encompassing of all those around it. And that's the case where we are those who infiltrate, which anyone can do, and but few do it effectively. All of us can be anthropologists. You ever been approached by a nice mall kiosk rep who seems to take an interest in you out of all the beautiful people that are walking by you in the mall, and you're like, oh man, here he comes. You probably don't make eye contact with this guy, avoid him, or you probably just ignore him. You probably do this because you realize they're selling you something either you don't want. They probably don't know how to approach you. They just approach you like a lion just coming at a gazelle. Missions that enter the field with no information, no cultural awareness, no preparation result in fear and shock of those who enter the host culture. Will ultimately harm the quality of work that you are attempting to do and you're attempting to accomplish. This is true for those of you who work abroad or in public or private sectors. As host cultures, you'll engage on paper. It becomes something different than when you're actually there. This includes America. This includes where you are right now. And so, how do we then go and infiltrate? How do we become these ambassadors that the gospel calls us to be? We do this through relationship, because our goals as missionaries are to reach those with the gospel. We need to be relationship minded first. As those mall kiosk reps have no connection right now to you, those of you who go into the mission field without being relationship minded are approaching people in the same way. Right now, outside of Christ and our proxy and our companies, and those people won't know. But John 13 is a really good scripture to illuminate this. John 13 expresses how our service to others is a direct reflection of our love. Relationships, no one wants to buy cell phone cases from, or Bibles, or good news from people they don't know. A lot of cultures, they're very hostile towards outsiders, which is very, very common misconception people bring into the mission field. But people we don't seek to understand them first, that might be filling, that might be this. I'm sorry, the people that we're looking to seek, we may need to till the soil first before we're able to plant seeds or even water them. So how do we first then jump to relationship? Like how do we do that? Most people in our culture are oblivious to other people. This is perpetuated by racial stereotypes, perpetuated in media, which indeed, if you are exposed to this over and over again, you're just going to assume that this is who these people are. This is a key anthropological tool that you can use to liberate yourself from falling in line with these, with this. It leads to further confusion and it hinders your chance and our chance that we have to share with other cultures and the gospel. By inviting different perspectives, such as through literature, through music, you should be able to gain enough, depending on what you're doing. You won't have to rely on singular stories, singular sources, sources like the news, etc. Another thing that ties into this is because singular stories that we're just prone to. That's just how our culture works. The term is called wrong imaginations, and so we can then, from our singular stories, then imagine what things are like. For example, when I was growing up, I had taken 3 years of German in high school, failed all 3 years, but I still took German 3 years in a row. And we had these very nice textbooks that let us, gave us little pictures of how Germans looked, what they ate, what they did. It was very nice pictures of, Swiss Alps for some reason in there, And these people seem to like be perpetually living in the 80s, the 90s. And so my perception was of Europe was it's not as culturally advanced as the United States. They don't have what we have. They're second rate to America, which is wrong. And they can these wrong imagination through singular stories. Nobody told me that this was what it was like. I just assumed this because this is what I had seen over and over again. So they can leave you with completely biased view um, of culture. And so a good way to avoid to unravel this is just like in hermeneutics when you're asked to um, include different sources, different translation of the Bibles to pursue people who have who share in a close experience or an imaginative way of of the people that are through the mission work that you're looking to do, to surround yourself with through those and through by sharing through their experience in different arrays of works. You're just opening yourself up to different perspective that will really untangle any misconception, any just any ignorance you have towards the people that you're looking to reach, and provide you with accuracy. And there's less chance that you're gonna have any misconception when you arrive because you're going to be prepared, and that might actually be able to allow you to tear off um, different pieces and might bring you to different conclusions. Think and make you ask questions you may never have thought to ask. So why should you care? Well, the opportunity to engage and meet people all over the world is something we get to do. 100 years ago, our ancestors, your great grandparents, would never have been able to meet or have the or probably had, but probably wouldn't even thought to have seen the importance of learning about other people, to about studying them. Um, I know it's not as sexy as you might envision it. It might seem like you're sitting in a really hot exam room reading books with collared sleeves in the 1800s. I get it. It doesn't seem very exciting, but anthropology is something that aids in scaling the cultural walls and finding the best common denominator that works for us to serve and connect. This is also to become allows us to become more Christ-like and loving people first, so that we can tell them of the supercultural truth that is applicable to us all. You know, wealth, national identity, cultures, countries, occupations, they come and go. And what's considered worthy investments of the time, honestly, they probably are. But investing in people to further glorify God, you'll never come up void. That's just the pursuit. Investing in people is something that we're called to do, and we are furnished this opportunity to do so in ways that are just amazing. And so anthropology is a tool that allows us to further the progress of the gospel of Jesus Christ, and further allows us to engage with people that we might spend hundreds of years, I'm sorry, spend our lifetimes just preaching the same verses to over and over again. They're not here, but at least they're understanding, or they're able to understand you, and vice versa. I just thank you for your time, and I just hope you all have a great day. Please drive safe.